Hello, everyone. We've got Luke and Heidi here from Pixels. Heidi, the CMO, and Luke, CEO and founder. Thanks for joining us. Look, today's panel is on navigating community growth. And I think, if there's one game that's had hypergrowth recently, it is Pixels. So you guys know better guys to talk to us about it. But I guess what would be a really interesting point to kick it off is you guys recently clocked over 1 million daily users per day. So when a game gets that big, like, how important is it to maintain the focus on community growth?
Yeah, so community is the most important thing in a game in general, and especially inside of Web3. One thing that we've been learning too, though, is just sheer number of users is also not the most important metric all the time too. If you have a community that doesn't care about what you're building, that community is kind of useless. A lot of the work at Pixels is making sure that we can identify the best community members, making sure that we're building for that community that actually has that same long-term vision as us inside of the game, and doing a lot of work around that. So that's kind of been the focus and the core of the Pixels tech over the last 6 to 8 months, really figuring out who the best players are, how we align the incentives between players and us, and then how do we align our strategy towards making sure that we're listening to the players who actually care about what we're doing as well.
Yeah, and I can hop in on that. Basically, what he's getting at is you said how important is community growth, and we turn around and say community retention is more important, because you can keep growing, you can keep getting new players, you can keep getting more bots, but you really want to be able to identify your strong players and keep them there and happy and continuing to build the community, and then organic growth just comes along with it.
Amazing. And I know, Luke, you said earlier this year in an interview that one of the biggest challenges is, as the game grows, it's kind of trying to maintain that balance between listening to community feedback and also game development. So how is Pixels managing that challenge now as the game's just growing more and more?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky thing about having a live game, right? It's really, really easy to talk about the right things to do before a game is live, and you can criticize what games are doing in the arena. I think that's one thing that I really respect about Axie Infinity for a long time. I saw Axie Infinity come up, and I saw a lot of people trying to say a lot of bad things about Axie Infinity for a while. Silently, we were in the arena building a game, and we realized how hard it was to have a live game out and all the work that it takes to do to get there and actually innovate in the space. The real innovation in Web3 gaming happens when you have a live game and you're in the arena. I wouldn't trust the opinions of people who haven't launched a game, to be honest, in this space. But there are some battle-tested teams out in the last year now, which is great. And I love seeing more and more people getting into Web3 gaming also and finally releasing their games, because it means that there's going to be more innovation in Web3 gaming too, right? Web3 gaming's not so fun when there's just one or two games out there doing all the experimentation and then there's nothing else out there. I'm excited to see other people come in and try new things and actually move the space in other ways besides us. What we've been trying to do is focus on new innovative game mechanics that our community loves. We've been focusing a lot on the metrics lately that matter to us. And our metrics have shifted from what we've cared about. At first, we were all about DAU. We've started to realize that DAU is not the most important metric for us right now. It really is around that core audience retention. It's about monetization. It's about our users actually using the tokens in a way that we think is healthy for the ecosystem. And ecosystem growth to us looks a lot more like the use of the token. Basically, money kind of talks when it talks to retention inside of the ecosystem. If people aren't sticking around, if people aren't actually participating in the ecosystem and having skin in the game, it's not really long-term community minded at all.
Do you have anything to add to that as well, Heidi?
No, I think you nailed it.
I think as well, you both mentioned core audience retention as well as a word. And that's super interesting, because I think it must be a challenge in itself as the game gets bigger, community management, just managing the community as well, going from, a game that might just have a Discord or a Telegram and a couple of thousand users to the beast that Pixels has become. I mean, how do you guys manage that now, and what's the challenges that come along with that?
It's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of commitment. I would say what we did right was set a really strong foundation right from the beginning. When Luke and I first joined forces and Pixels was brand new, we decided the kind of culture we wanted, which kind of went against the grain of crypto at the time. We wanted something wholesome, family friendly, childlike, nostalgic, which the previous bull market was none of the above, right? But people really aligned with that. And when you find those people that align with your culture, it becomes their home, their safe space. So we just honed in really hard on that. And we still have a huge player base that were here 3 years ago with us. And so that's just like proving our point, right? Okay, there's people here that want this too. So then from there, we were able to continue to do what I said earlier, empower our users to help us with this organic growth. And then through that, when we go through growth spurts, also growth is never linear. That's another thing people always ask, like, how do you grow like this? We don't. We go like this, right? And so during these extreme growth periods is when we implement strong changes. So like when our first huge growth period, I'll never forget, we have these volunteer moderators in our Discord called the Farmhands, and I was making that role literally in like the Mexico airport because it was just, okay, we need more help. And now some of them are here managing our booth, right? And 2 years later, which is really cool. So basically what I'm getting at is setting that solid foundation has allowed us to sustain the community culture through all of these growth periods and rely on our community members to continue to keep our culture farmer friendly, happy, healthy, and all the things that we really want it to be.
Yeah, communities are formed around a couple of things. One is shared values and shared missions. And if you don't have those things from the very beginning, the community won't ever be able to form organically, right? You're kind of trying to force a community that way too. So we did some things that were really counter-narrative at the time in 2021. Like we didn't allow swearing in our Discord, which if you guys remember the 2021 bull run, there were like a lot of these crypto bro, degen people that we could clearly see had no interest in the game or any of the values of what we had at Pixels and what we wanted the community to look like. And we didn't really allow them to participate in the community at the very beginning. And, you know, it was one of those things that was painful at the beginning because we probably could have failed a Discord with like tens of thousands of people like this who were very interested in floor price of the NFT and like quick ROI at the time was like a really big one for them. But we instead wanted the people to like join the community who believed in the long-term of Web3 gaming, who had like a bit more of a patient mindset, who liked the game that we were building, and it was really, really intentional at the beginning. And the thing that Heidi's done really well at Pixels too is basically bringing those people who shared the like most aligned values inside of the community, allow them to be leaders inside of the community too. Basically, it creates better systems at scale because you're bringing like the true believers in and giving them opportunities to help culture and foster the community and scale it to like hundreds of thousands as well.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. You said, you know, people that are in the chat at the start now are working for you guys full time. It's almost like if you join in early on, you can have an opportunity at the end. I think it just goes to show as well with the strength of your community. I mean, recently a couple just got married in September, Cloud White and his partner Laura as well. So, I mean, did that just reaffirm how strong your community is?
Yeah, I actually would love to speak to that moment because imagine, you know, I'm sitting on my parents' patio and we're just watching these two people we've never met get married. My parents have no idea what's going on, but we're all watching and sharing this beautiful moment together. And so are so many people. Thousands of people are coming together to watch this marriage of people that met at AxiCon, right? And so it felt so heartwarming and just so lovely. And there were multiple sides to that occasion because it was proving the strength of our community, of the Ronin and Axie community, and all of this coming together. And then on the Pixel side, it was also proving like we're an incredible place to host events where thousands of people can come together and share this wholesome moment together. So it was just all around like just a beautiful moment for Pixels and the greater community.
And I think it's important too to recognize that our community is kind of bigger than us as well. And our community will come with asks to us. And if we want to actually own it and, you know, actually tell the community that we care about them, we have to also listen to what they're bringing to us. And this is one of the things that like community members brought to us.
Finance came to us. Mm-hmm. I went to YGG.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, that's one of those asks where it's like, oh, we don't have time for this. Like we could have easily been like, oh, this doesn't fit into our roadmap. But we prioritized it because we think it's something cool. And we wanted to show the community that, hey, if you guys have ideas like this, or if you want to get involved, like we're going to have a space for you to do that.
So if anyone wants to get married in Pixels, it's an open offer.
That's a standing offer. I'll say it. Yeah, if you want to have.
We have the map.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I guess, did you guys expect the rapid growth that you guys have had over the last couple of years?
I mean, no and yes, right? Like when you build a company, you obviously want to have high ambitions for this, right? Like my mission statement coming into Web3 gaming is I don't like to view us in competition with Web3 games. I think it's a really small scope and view of Web3 gaming, and I think a lot of founders get caught up in that. I think it's a really easy early founder mistake to see the space that you're in as competitive rather than blue ocean. And my aspiration here is we're trying to build a company in an industry that goes and competes with the Web2 giants. Like you should really consider your competition in Web3 gaming to be Scopely or Zynga or Voodoo, like some of these gaming giants that are making billions a year, right? So that's what we came in and set to do. And then when it comes to growth, right, we were building a foundation that we thought would be able to get there, right? And we've been focused on fundamentals for the longest time too. We haven't really been trend chasing here at Pixels. Obviously, when trends come, you should go and like ride them if you can. But also, it's really easy to get distracted quite easily as well. So the thing we did at Pixels, we built a game first before we started pushing more of the Web3 components. And we also had a game that could retain users, was fun, and live before we started to introduce new growth channels. Like before we moved to Ronin, our game was live for a year and a half, right? And we had been putting a lot of work in the live economy to like iterating with player feedback for a year and a half. There was a lot of work behind the scenes before we went and like showed the game to more people that allowed for that growth, right? And that's kind of how I view every single stage, right? Now we're like in a good spot with a Web3 audience. We want to start expanding to a new user base. There's more changes that we need to make to the core product in order to get that Web2 growth. Like for example, if you played Pixels, our onboarding is not very good, right? That's okay for a Web3 audience. Web3 people are very okay with jumping through hoops. And it's not something you need to do to get to the first million DAU, in my opinion. When you're trying to expand and get hyper competitive against the Web2 things, maybe it's time to start looking into that again, right? So that's kind of the game plan for us, right? Basically, get ready for that next stage of growth and make sure you have the fundamentals down before you even try to push that.
Yeah, and I guess just looking back, like more broadly at the last 12 months for Web3 gaming now, where we are now, did you expect where we are now would be, when it was January time? Like, how has it played out to what you were kind of predicting at the start of the year?
It's crazy because I think people forget really quickly. 12 months ago, people thought Web3 gaming was dead. Yeah. And look where we're at now. Like, this event is super lively. There's no industry belief that Web3 gaming is dead now. There's still a lot of questions on like what's going to work in the long run. But like the space now believes in Web3 gaming fully. Even the Web2 people are getting a little scared. We're not quite there yet. I think there's still a lot of work and like growth that the Web3 gaming industry needs to get to. But I think we're kind of showing that Web3 gaming is legitimate. There are good quality games out here. There's more coming out into the space. And the belief is really different, which is a great spot to be in. Now we kind of have to go improve ourselves. I'm always in a prove yourself mindset, right? We can't say that we're competing with Web2 games until we actually are. And I don't think many people are there yet or even quite ready. But that's going to be the next stage of growth for this industry.
I guess, we've seen a lot of Web2 gaming guys, similar to TradFi, people jumping over to crypto. It's kind of been similar with Web2 gaming jumping over to Web3 as well. Have you seen a lot of that recently, especially within Pixels? Have you managed to convert any of...
So it's interesting because I think the Web2 people have a really different mindset in how they built their businesses. And that's great. Like they've obviously built stuff that's worked for them. But this is also, I think it's like somewhat of a generational thing too, where it's like, okay, the previous generation that went and built companies, they learned their own methods to do it. They don't want to grind in the same way as what it takes to go and build something completely new and innovative, right? Which is a really good opportunity for like young and hungry people in the space who have that energy, that drive to build something new and innovative, to come in and innovate, right? So that's where the Web3 game founders who didn't come from the Web2 industry actually have a good advantage in the early stages because they're willing to try new things that maybe didn't work in Web2 but can work in a different way inside of Web3. They're willing to kind of break the rules in different ways as well. We did a lot of things that are not standard practice inside of Web2. Like for example, our build in public approach and our perpetual live ops mode is a big no-no inside of Web2 gaming. In Web2 gaming, you're supposed to build your game for years and not really show people until it's perfect and ready. And Web3 gaming, we never really had that approach, right? Like we like to build more like a startup at Pixels than a Web2 studio would, where that means we break things really often or release not perfectly polished updates because we're still in a stage where we need to be trying things out and we need to be taking risk, right? These Web2 companies can't really afford to take risk in the same way. So that's a great opportunity for us. So the Web2 people, we're starting to hire more of that talent and we're starting to train them in Web3 basically off of the things that we've learned. But having a complete Web2 mindset and trying to come into Web3, we haven't really seen work, even from people who have built great games inside of Web2. What we've learned is basically you can't just build a Web2 game and slap Web3 on it. It's just not going to work. You have to have a different approach. It requires new methods, and that's where like this mix of like the Web3 and the Web2 come together really well.
Yeah, and I know you've previously said as well, like 80% done, better than perfect in interviews before as well. And I think most people in Web3 can agree with that. It's just putting it out there as opposed to waiting. And that brings us to, I guess, talking about like open betas and, early release games, which provide great opportunities for building growth, but at the same time can be a pain point for like impatient gamers as well. So where do you see that going over the next couple of years now as Web3 gaming evolves?
I mean, I think the reality is the industry is still early, so people have to be getting stuff out more often and earlier because we still don't know all the methods that will work for scaling Web3 games, right? If Web3 gaming was as mature as Web2 gaming is right now, that would probably not be the right approach. But we still haven't all figured out the right user acquisition channels. A lot of the core infrastructure still isn't built, especially when it comes to like earnings tech. Like this is an area that we're innovating on a lot right now, of kind of figuring out who to give earnings to, how we can grow games without ads. But these are like entirely new UA channels that have none of the infra built. Like there's no like Web3 equivalent of like App11 or any of these companies that have like great ad networks, right? So in this stage, it's still the time to experiment, and you can't figure out what's going to work when you're, locked in your office and not shipping anything, right? Like you need to actually get stuff out in the open, get some feedback, take experiments, take risks, and then maybe in 5 years when the industry has like some best practices and standards, you can take your time, build in stealth, and release something great. But we're not in that stage yet. That's the reality.
I guess like from more working with inside the company and being able to take more risks, like surely that's got more adrenaline, right? Like putting out something early and not knowing exactly how it's going to go as opposed to, doing the Grand Theft Auto route and waiting years and years to put something out. I mean, do you want it to go to that way? Like, do you want to be waiting years or do you kind of enjoy putting things out and see how it goes?
I mean,
it's a mixture.
Yeah, we're gonna get some like dissenting opinions just even on this panel between me and Heidi because Heidi has to deal with when we make mistakes. Now the thing with like taking risks is you're gonna get some things wrong, and you're gonna get some things wrong often. But the thing is, if you're not getting things wrong, you're not taking enough risk, you're not releasing enough, and then you're probably not innovating enough, right? But then that also means that we'll release some things that haven't gone the way that we want it to sometimes, and the community management is not always the easiest there.
Yeah, you have to have a thick skin, but it's also you have to kind of set an understanding with your community that like you're a part of something new here too, and we're innovating and we're creating something that's never been done before. And with that comes these risks that we're taking and this 80-20% mentality and whatnot. So yeah, community management takes a lot of work, and I think like he was suggesting earlier, some Web2 folks might not understand that. In my opinion, the biggest difference between Web2 and Web3 gaming is the community element and that building in public opportunity. I can't even imagine doing it without that, if I'm being totally honest. So yeah, it's a lot of extra work, I would say. But yes, the adrenaline is absolutely there.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that too. That's also the cool thing about building a Web3. There's better incentive alignment around this as well too. What's cool is a lot of our core audience is actually totally in line with the fact that they're in something new and innovative. They also get to participate in helping us as well. Like a lot of our community is very actively involved in giving feedback on game design. They're actually building out tools that help fill in some of the gaps that we might not have released ourselves. Like one of the best examples is this tool called Pixels.tips that we have. It's a community-built tool that is so essential for playing Pixels right now. It basically gives you like a live view of the marketplace inside of the game. It's kind of like a marketplace stock market. in a way. And yeah, almost every player of our game uses it. Community built completely, and they get to be involved in that. And they also have aligned incentives through all the Web3 components as well. It's cool.
Yeah, if I ever get a complaint from anyone ever, it's a screenshot from that website showing some data points. I'm like, yep, yeah, okay. But it's something you touched on too is, yeah, that feedback loop, right? So our players are essential in this feedback and helping us build the game, which goes back to empowering our users, which makes them feel like they're actually a part of something because they literally are. And, 2 years ago, if you submitted a request and we implemented it into the game, they're still here because they feel like they own part of that, because they really do. Like they're the reason that got implemented in the game. Like the claim all button in the marketplace, for instance, I was hounded by so many people on that, and we finally got that in, and then it was like a parade for all of the users that had been asking for it, right? So that's like a very simple instance of that feedback that got implemented into the game, and now it's like couldn't live without it, right? So
I guess it'd be actually interesting to hear your perspective on the marketing side. I mean, how important is it as the CMO to really understand the core voice of the gamers who are actually playing Pixels?
Oh, I think that's my entire job. It's really funny too, because whenever I talk to like CMOs from like the most typical Web 2 companies, we don't speak the same language. They're asking me these like very, I went to university for this questions, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. Because marketing in Web 3 is so community oriented and so different to, just like, I don't know, like normal, normal jobs. That it just doesn't even compare. I think understanding your community, their voice, their needs, their wants, and empowering them and standing up for them too. Like you should see some of our internal conversations where I'm hounding our designers for something, right? Because it's my job to. So yeah, I think that's key.
Yeah, and our
Absolutely.
growth strategy is community too.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different because in Web 2, what you'll do is you'll raise a ton of money and you'll spend all that money on ads, barely any of that money on game development. And our difference here inside of Web 3 is we want to figure out ways to help our community help us grow. So
Yeah.
without that community, it doesn't work. And a lot of our growth is either product driven or incentive driven, or like through the experience of being in the Pixels community. And we're always looking for aligned incentives. So it really helps to think about things through community, through that core fan base, and giving reasons for these people to help us, basically.
I guess, for those people that might be starting up a game or working on a game yet to be released now, I mean, what advice would you have for them on building community, like a very strong core community?
Okay, you know what's something that I think we've done right, and I would love to hear from our users in the audience, our weekly AMAs. Do any of you come to them? Your normie friend watches them. I love, this is Gio, guys. This is literally the founder of Axie, and his normie friend wife watches our AMAs. Okay, so I'm shocked more companies haven't copied us, because I think that was one of our strongest community building things we could have done, and we did. So do that for new community builders. I will say it's very hard, and I think that's also why we haven't been copied as much in that case. And then also figure out what kind of culture you want, and don't stray from it. I mean, make sure that there are other people that agree with you, but if you want it, there will be other people too, right? 2 years ago, can you imagine me sitting there behind my screen telling grown men not to swear? Okay, because that's what I was doing, but it worked. And, no sexism, no homophobia, no racism, none of that is allowed at all. And because of that, I actually think we have one of the biggest female player bases in the industry, which I love. So just stick to your gut, stick to the culture that you want, and you'll find others that want it too.
Yeah, and a reminder, the fundamentals of community building, it's shared vision and shared goals, right? And shared values. So it's funny because Pixels only didn't have a game for like a month of its
I
community.
remember when we launched farming.
Yeah. And it is so much easier to build community if they all have something to do together and talk about together.
Yeah.
Trying to have it maintain and retain a community when there's no activity for them to do together, it gets really, really difficult. So just ship the game.
And empower them too. Like you all are so creative in the ideas that you come up with. You're live streaming and doing an activity together that I would have never even thought of doing. It's incredible. So really just empower everyone in your community to like be leaders and do whatever they want and come together and find their communities. We have thousands and thousands of micro communities within Pixels that, you know, that's their safe space, that's their home. And I bring this up in probably every single interview ever, but why are users spending their precious hours with you on your platform?
Yeah.
Why?
And it's funny, the startup mindset too, like if you go to like Silicon Valley, is like the startup mindset that's very prevalent is you should be pretty embarrassed about your first product. And if you aren't, then you've waited a little too long to release it. That's not the mentality in gaming, but I really think it should be, especially when you're in a really early experimental like industry like us. Yeah, release it even if you're embarrassed. The first version of our game was so bad, but it was still something for people to do and talk about, and that helped the community building 10x.
I guess, you know, just wrapping it up, what can people expect from Pixels over the next 12 months? You guys sizzling up anything exciting, or what's on the roadmap?
Yeah, so there's a few things. One, we're continuing to make the game better and better. So expect consistent updates and improvements just in core gameplay of Pixels. We have a really great team that's getting even better ideas out, and there's some cool stuff there. Two, we're really innovating on some of our like play to earn tech. A lot of the core stuff and innovation that we're doing is essentially like targeted rewards. So basically, how do we give out less rewards to bots? How do we give them out to good ecosystem players? And then the other thing that we're also figuring out is how can we 10x improvements in gameplay, not necessarily through us as well. So we're also working on acquisition and publishing deals too. Like if there's a certain mechanic that we're missing in Pixels, we might be able to get it into the game quicker by just acquiring a team or acquiring a game or publishing a game as well too. We'll probably have some announcements about that kind of stuff pretty soon, but it gets really interesting when we start to do that and build more of a mesh of different experiences, all powered by the same data layer, the same earnings engine, same reputation system. There's a lot of cool stuff coming.
And we are doing a live AMA on Saturday. I think it's at 10:30. I don't know what the venue is, but it's here, so it'll be really cool. So come hang out with us on Saturday.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Luke and Heidi. Give it up for those.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.